What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I do want to go over the Dragster class again. Now, in the recent one, I did go over like the best part set build, which of course had to do with like Frenetic and Pure. For this one though, I do want to go over something a bit different, and it fixes that I have basically seen legit nowhere. That is going to be the Cluster, which I guess it does say increase gear shifting boost effect by 2%. Funnily enough, when grinding out and, actually going after maxed out part sets for the drag class, which currently is only going to be the Nitro Chemist because my RNG was terrible, grinding it out for 6 hours, I only got one set. Did not even get a loot digger, which is insane. But for Cluster, though, it's supposed to increase the gear shifting boost effect by, around 2% or 1.2 or how much you want to spend on it to get like the maxed out. But for this, though, will go up to 14% if you actually want to have it on all 7 parts of the vehicle. The one thing I did notice, though, is in the driver perk, for some odd reason, it goes to 20%. Not really sure why they actually did it that way. Like, if you are going to have like an actual part or a fix-it stat, why is it going to be lower than the actual like legend points? Kind of odd. This goes up to 20% though, and I have to admit, when maxing out a drag car, I did notice how much of a difference this actually makes on it. So I was like, you know what though, let's add the 20% on it. Also another 14% on top of that in the drag car and see what it does to it. And then I'm also going to do an actual run on the drag event, not running anything whatsoever, to really see how this actually does. Now keep in mind, guys, I really do feel like if you are running this perk, when is the best time to use it? Well, I hate to say this, but it's probably going to be a good perk to actually run when going after a max set. Like, a lot of players might be like, well, Block, like, do I need to have something like Pure and Cluster on my vehicle that help me? To be honest, if we actually had a drag event and a summit, then yeah, having something like that could boost your speed a bit. But a lot of players are still going to go after something like Pure and Frenetic because it is just that good. The thing about Cluster, though, is it is supposed to give you a bigger boost when shifting the vehicle, or of course, going through the gears. So when drag racing, you obviously are shifting to have a bigger boost in that said vehicle. So the biggest question is having just the regular driver legend points. Let's see if it makes a difference. But now moving over to the second run here, let's actually try this out with a 20% boost from the actual driver legend points to really see how much it does truly boost up the shifting when doing this. Now, as I did mention before, though, I actually ran this a lot when maxing out the drag cars because I do think it helps. You guys will notice on the side there, it does seem to boost up the speed a bit more. And right there, going into 5th gear, instead of actually going to like 260 miles an hour, I immediately went to like around 200 and like 80 plus, and then it boosted all the way up to like 300 a bit faster. So I would actually say having cluster on the vehicle does help a bit compared to not having nothing whatsoever on it. But here's the biggest problem. Are a lot of players really going to run something like Cluster and Pure over Pure and Frenetic? To be honest, guys, the biggest thing about having a drag car is obviously having the most power from it. And if you are running this, you're not going to need Cluster on anything but the drag events. So the biggest issue here is probably going to come down to the fact of only having a second Chemist build, which I would almost guarantee most people don't even want to grind out drag cars for that, including myself, because I can barely get one set done. And a lot of players probably don't even have a Nitro Chemist set. So yeah, you could go in and maybe change one perk around to have Pure and maybe Cluster, and then go back and have that being Pure and Frenetic. But even then, I feel like it's kind of annoying. So moving over to the final run here, now having a 34% boost on Cluster, the big question is, does it truly make a difference and do you actually need this? Now the big thing about this though, guys, I feel like a lot of players are not going to aim for this part set build because let's be real, there is probably going to be better ones you could go after. Like for example, if you were going after maxed out part sets on a drag car, are you really going to run Cluster on every part? I would probably say no. And the reason why I do mention that though is a lot of players are going to be like, well, Block, should I run Cluster on all my parts to get, parts faster? It is going to make me faster in the events, which I would say is going to be a fair and also a valid argument. But here's the issue. If you are grinding out parts for the drag cars, you're most likely going to be here 4 hours on end. So what is the best thing to do there? I would definitely recommend adding Lucky and also Goldfinger to your vehicle. That way you're going to have better luck of actually going after the parts. In return, I would only actually have the cluster on the driver legend points. That way it is going to help a bit with your drag car having Lucky and Goldfinger on your part builds. And I currently can't shift right now. Probably because these are kind of like not the hardest game modes to do. You can basically sit here and still easily beat that. Like right there, guys, I have this on the max difficulty. I legit screwed up so bad and I still max it out there. and I still managed to beat that guy's basically completely failing at shifting. Like, that's pretty hilarious. So one thing you could say about Cluster is one thing it can be good for. If you're looking to kind of do this kind of lazy, which I can't blame you, at least you really don't even have to try when completing it because it gives you that boost when shifting. But if you are looking to still get this done, guys, 9.3 seconds. Legit running a regular part set build having Goldfinger and Lucky. So I really don't feel like you actually have to have the cluster perk on like a build. And the reason for that though is a lot of players are probably going after max part sets. Now if we were to see something in like a summit to where you had to use like a drag car in an actual drag event, which would probably be kind of shocking, that would then actually make that perk a bit more useful because yeah, it's going to give you that boost. Then again though guys, even back in the Crew 2, having the best part build in that game was Pure and Frenetic. At least for the drag cars doing the events because you get more power on the nitrous and you also get more nitrous, so it is going to make you faster. So really having a smaller or lower boost on the shifting isn't a terrible thing. But overall though guys, the big thing I can say about the Cluster Affix is to most likely only have the driver legend points on it. Giving you that 20% boost when doing like the events probably is the best way to do it, and I would definitely not recommend going after like an actual part set build with that affixed stat, unless for some odd reason you actually manage to get yourself two different chemist sets for the Dragster category, then sure, maybe add something like Pure and Cluster, like Cluster and Frenetic, and just do some testing there because you have a second set to do it with. Overall though guys, I would say having Cluster on all 7 parts isn't worth it, and I would just recommend having like the legend points active that way. At least you do have a 20% boost when grinding out part sets, even though going after a max part set for a drag car is currently a nightmare.